Aliona, without looking up, was looking at a white rectangular piece of paper with cramped monograms. No matter how hard she tries, she'll have to call. And it wasn't about a person, it was more like a call to the past. The very past that Aliona so wanted to forget and erase from her life. But she just can't do without help right now. And she didn't even doubt that this man would do everything to fulfill her request. I doubted myself, but I didn't doubt him. And who could have imagined that the Joker fate would bring them together after so many years? 3 hours later, she was sitting opposite a well-known authority in certain circles and told in great detail about what had happened. The story turned out to be long. She had a hard time after school. She remembered her senior year poorly, and, by the way, not without the participation of the same Artem, who, sipping whiskey, was now listening to her attentively. Then at the disco, where her friend dragged her, the friends of his gang, then not particularly famous, raped her. This was the period that I wanted to forget. Together with a friend, who, as it turned out, was notified in advance, which is why she demanded so persistently to keep her company. Although I knew that Alyanka does not like noisy companies and dubious parties. Then it took her a long time to come back to life. It also knocked down the mother. It's no joke, the only daughter raised alone. Stress for Irina Petrovna was not in vain. A year later, the doctor's diagnosis sounded like a verdict. 3 months later my mother did not. And Aliona promised herself to finish her studies and become a doctor in order to help people in memory of a loved one. The girl graduated from the last course in absentia, having got a job in a nursing home. So it was easier to comprehend the treatment protocols, and although small, there was money. Scholarships at the hospital were not enough for anything, payment for rented housing ate up most of the income. It was possible to return to his hometown, but there is only one hospital and the number of places is limited. And here in the clinic on the outskirts of the city there were elderly patients who could not be kept at home or their relatives did not want to, although, however, there were those who sought to communicate. Here Aliona was in her place. The agile, attentive nurse was known and loved in the department for the appropriate word of support and neat hands. Since few people could put her on and for. She never shouted or swore, it was rare. Old people are like children, they need patience. Pavel Ivanovich was brought to the institution by his nephew, a stocky and confident young man. Almost constantly he was on the phone, solving some important business, promised to visit and left the phone number at the reception. Then Aliona did not pay attention to him, carried away by the inspection of the new one. The stage was neglected, everything was complicated by the patient's unwillingness to live. Only after a couple of days the old man made contact. I told Aliona that there was no one here in the city except Alexei, the nephew who brought me. My daughter has been living abroad for a long time, there are grandchildren there, my wife died recently, and a tired person is not fighting for life. Whatever he wants. It's faster to go to your spouse, with whom you have lived soul to soul for almost 50 years. In a word, not a patient, but a task with an asterisk. But Aliona is not used to giving up. A month later Pavel Ivanovich was playing chess with his roommates and arguing about the latest news. The disease did not recede, but gave a little more time. At that time, Elena, in addition to work, was carried away by another one. As the past did not interfere, but gradually Sergei took over her attention. They met quite by chance in a cafe, where the guy looked in for a minute. Then Aliona found out that it really was an accident. He usually attended an institution of a completely different level. The only son of very wealthy parents knew no refusal in anything, although attention and money could not spoil him. It was weird. Sergei worked at his father's firm, and held a position not for show. Serious work, he was engaged in the legal aspects of contracts, so when he invited her to meet her parents, Aliona was confused. She just didn't know how to behave in such a society. The arrogance of the mother contrasted unpleasantly with the simplicity of the son. Contemptuously examining the candidacy of the future daughter-in-law, Olga Viktorovna pursed her lips. It was clearly believed on her face that she had assumed that her son would bring a more worthy person. And then the unexpected happened. About such cases, they say that the light band has been replaced by a dark one. And how everything really happened, Aliona found out very soon. And then, on the next morning shift, the news stunned her. The nursing home was going to be closed. The staff whispered among themselves that the reason for their location was that the territory was too gorgeous among the century-old pines on the riverbank for elderly people who had one foot in the grave. It gets worse. It was hard even to remember. The developer turned out to be her Sergei's company, or rather her mother's, but that didn't change much. Rumors began to spread around that she knew about everything, because it was not for nothing that she was so often met by a major on an expensive car. She had neither the strength nor the desire to prove the opposite. She did not believe that her Sergei could participate in such a case until the chief physician helpfully slipped her a copy of the contract. There was his signature. She broke off the relationship without any explanation. Why? It turns out that he just took advantage of the situation to get closer to the object. Aliona even changed her phone and rented apartment, not wanting to have anything more to do with the traitor. At first, she still held on. The same nephew of Pavel Ivanovich offered to take care of the old man at his home and paid well, and then the disease became sharply active, and the elderly patient left. The situation has become quite desperate, especially considering her condition. More than a month ago, Aliona realized that something strange was happening: nausea, a change in tastes, weakness. As a doctor, she found the answer very quickly. The gestation period was short, but to have an abortion meant never having children again. After that terrible incident at school, the doctors warned that there could be problems with motherhood and it would be a miracle if she managed to get pregnant at all. So the prospects were not rosy. There was still time to think, but Aliona knew that she would do everything possible to keep the baby. However, she didn't know how to do it herself. Without an apartment and a job, it will be difficult to raise a child to his feet. But she has already decided, if there is no other way out, she will return to her native village. Even if she is not a doctor, she has arms and legs, she will be able to earn a penny. Oddly enough, Alexei helped out. After the death of his uncle, his nephew allowed him to live in an empty apartment. He didn't need it himself, he had his own, and he didn't need money. No wonder he was constantly on the phone. It turned out, he runs a large company. Not the owner, but enough for bread and butter. Imperceptibly, Alexei surrounded her with such care and that Aliona no longer imagined that such a thing could happen. After the birth of my son, I spent a lot of time with them. She was confused by some little things in the form of the desire to get a report for everything, but then she was too busy with motherhood. Alexei helped me find a job. A businessman by nature, he quickly realized that after the closure of the nursing home, the niche remained empty. There were companions and soon a new private institution was opened, pathetically called a holiday home. That's where Aliona was accepted for the position of head. Both the experience and the education are suitable, and the patients in the city remembered about her. 2 years flew by unnoticed, and then Alexei proposed to get married. Why such conventions, if they are always together? Aliona did not feel ardent love. Well, she did not refuse. But after the wedding, strange changes began. Increasingly, the husband demanded to leave work and stay at home. He began to raise his voice. He could swing. I didn't beat him, but I tried to point to the place. It's amazing, because she couldn't even imagine that he would change so much. Sergei returned to her life unexpectedly. When she left work, an inconspicuous car braked next to her and she was not boldly hailed. Aliona, confused, at first she didn't even know how to react. Betrayal burned her soul, but the girl realized that the years had not changed her feelings. She still loved him. A cup of coffee stretched for hours. Aliona listened with surprise and did not believe what Sergei was telling. You know, I didn't immediately figure out why you broke off our relationship. I couldn't figure out what could have happened. And then it just came out. My brother and I were arguing about something, and everything came out under his emotions. They came up with this together with my mother to separate us. We calculated everything exactly, we stopped at nothing. They didn't care about the fate of the old people at all. Vlad forged my signature then, and in general he framed me coolly. After our quarrel with you, my mother sent me to a branch abroad, and Vlad took advantage of the moment around that building and transferred all the finances to offshore accounts abroad. So now I'm a poor man. Aliona just shook her head. Wow, how hard fate can be sometimes. She's no stranger to the lack of luxury, but what's it like for him? And, by the way, how is the mother? She died a year ago. Vlad's act had greatly upset her, she did not expect such a thing from him. Wait, where is he now? Yes, there, in Cyprus, it seems. Lives happily, spends honestly stolen. I had to sell my house and car to pay off my legal fees. So I'm far from being the major you remember me to be now. But I can't say the same about the other one. You know, I never stopped loving you. And I got married here. Not quite successfully, of course, more out of gratitude, but it seems that this was the reason that they will soon sit on my head. Aliona didn't say anything about the child, she didn't know why, but decided to keep silent. Let everything go on as usual, and if fate, he will still have time to find out about Ilya. She did not deceive her husband. She told me all about the meeting with her ex. And then it started. You're ungrateful, I'm everything to you, and you're dating everyone. Lesh, well, you know that I wasn't looking for anyone, everything happened by accident, so you shouldn't be talking about me. But Alexei broke up in earnest. No evidence could stop his imagination. In a rage, he backhanded Aliona in the face, and she was doused with a bucket of icy water. And how did she let this worthless man control her? At what stage did the will of the other obey? I'll file for divorce myself. Don't you dare, I'll sue your son and let him go around the world. Finally, Alexei showed his true face. As a deterrent, he cited completely ridiculous cases, hinting what could happen to her if she decided to leave him. And Aliona realized how wrong she was in him. Then the leader of the old gang, now an authoritative holder of the city, appeared in memory. He owed her, and not just because his boyfriends had hurt her once. Even while working in an old nursing home, she happened to save the life of a schoolboy who had congenital asthma at a bus stop. If she hadn't been there, everything could have ended sadly. The child simply did not have time to pull out the canister and lost consciousness. Then his father found a savior. So they crossed paths again. Nikolai gave her his business card. The debt payment is red, you will need at least something, call, I will solve everything. He decided to help. Alexei had to leave the city in a hurry and leave all claims to Aliona. She didn't even want to know how Nikolai had achieved this. Then he helped Sergei too. It turns out that if there are reliable connections and channels, getting someone from abroad is a mere trifle. The good name of the company and all assets were restored. Vlad disappeared somewhere in America and showed no desire to return. For forgery of signatures and fraud, it was not worth expecting bright prospects at home. Aliona hoped that this was the end of her trials. Isn't it too much for one life? Ilya's ringing voice pulled her out of her thoughts. Mom, Dad, and I are frozen, which one should you take? Sergei was already starting the car, and the woman smiled. Wait a minute, I'll come with you. She simply enjoyed every moment of her life and did not want to miss any opportunity to be near her dearest and dearest.